Does video length really impact video engagement or reach? And is there an ideal length that your videos should be? There are so many factors to how your video content performs, from the type of content you're creating or even the platform you're creating for, like Instagram, Reels, YouTube, or even TikTok. So in this episode, we are going to break down video length from insights directly from the apps. But also, I'm going to be sharing 3 really important strategies for identifying the perfect length for your video. And if you're new here, I'm Natasha of Shine with Natasha. I'm an agency owner, I'm a creator, I'm also a video marketing coach. So not only have I created tons of video content for clients, I've coached a lot of people on their content video length, and I have created a lot of content myself. So we're really going to bring this into play with the strategies that I'm sharing. And if you are watching on YouTube, we have a brand new setup. Isn't she cute? I'm playing around with it, but it's like a fun little change up with the goal that this is going to feel like a little more casual, more chatty. Let me know what you think. Let me know how you think it sounds. I'm like obsessed with this new Rode mic that I'm testing out. And yeah, let's get right into the video length chat. So I want to do a breakdown on short versus long form content. And first, we're starting with Instagram Reels. So Reels can be up to 90 seconds long, and currently they are testing 3-minute Reels. It's really important to note that technically you can post a video that is longer than 90 seconds, but Instagram has said that doesn't really perform as well. And when you go to post a longer video, you'll probably notice that it doesn't really pull up all the other features. With that insight that Instagram shared with creators, that videos over 90 seconds don't get great distribution, has got a lot of things circulating where people are like, longer videos don't perform well on Instagram. You don't want to post really long reels, which 90 seconds isn't even really that long. But as you'll see in the strategies that I share, I really don't think things are that black and white. For example, one of my favorite creators, Styling with Kenzie, she posts these really awesome style makeover videos. And these videos are literally up to 4 minutes long. And they're some of her top performing content on Instagram Reels. So I really don't think that long videos inherently don't perform better. To test this, I actually went and looked at some of my favorite creators that I follow, specifically ones that were in the food or fashion niche, because I find that these creators do something that is actually a very hot tip that you should be doing, where they essentially take an idea or a concept or a video series and they'll post it in a different format. So maybe they'll do one that's a little bit longer, maybe there's talking elements, or maybe they'll do something that's a little bit shorter with just different B-roll and text overlay. And I did a lot of comparing to see, did the shorter videos perform well than the longer videos? Did certain elements perform better? But honestly, there were some outliers that performed really well that were short and long. And there were ones that didn't perform as well that were short and long. So overall, there wasn't really a big difference. So I thought that was super interesting. And even when I look at my own content and my longer talking videos versus like shorter text overlay videos, there will be some that will perform really well and some that are shorter and longer that won't perform really well. Now let's talk about TikTok, because I think it's so interesting that TikTok started as like short, snappy videos, and it's slowly but surely become this platform where they are really preferring longer content. So you can post a TikTok video up to 10 minutes long. And more recently, they've actually been experimenting with hour-long content on TikTok, which I don't know about you, it feels wild to think that I would watch a video that is an hour long on my phone. It definitely seems like TikTok is trying to really bow up with YouTube, and it makes a lot of sense because I think it's really interesting that people pit TikTok against Instagram when I actually think it's a lot more similar to YouTube in terms of it being a search and discovery platform. Most of the content you will be able to consume and see on YouTube and TikTok is really content that's being recommended. And it's not even content from people that you are subscribed to or follow. This is just still being tested. It hasn't fully rolled out, but I think it'll be interesting to see how that performs. But it's obvious that they're not only leaning into this to compete with YouTube, but there probably is some really interesting data that longer content is performing really well on TikTok. And then when we have YouTube, this is where things get really interesting because it's really easy to think of YouTube as like a super long form platform. But I've seen content do really well that's 5 minutes, so super short and snappy. But also, there is content upwards to 60 minutes long that can also perform really well. Technically, you can post a video that is 12 hours long on YouTube if you're a verified account, but we're not talking about that today. We're not doing that. So, just to give a little bit of a summary from all the things that I just shared, overall, reels are seen as shorter, the better, under 90 seconds. But I really think it depends on the type of content, the goal of the content, and really that final video that you create. And then with TikTok, definitely try leaning into longer form content. If maybe TikTok is your main platform and you're also wanting to repost to maybe reels or also shorts, what you can do is you can do like a part 1, part 2, so you can split it up into different versions. Or you also could just condense it into a shorter version of that video. So taking out a few of the details as long as it doesn't reduce the quality of the content. And then YouTube, the Wild West, totally depends. And so this is where I want to share my approach to how to decide on the perfect length for your video. So first things first, it really depends on the type of content that you're creating. So Reels and TikTok, I think of them in the same category because they're vertical content. And so let's think about a text overlay, B-roll, audio type of content, a quote video. That's what I like to call it. For this type of content, I think the shorter, the better. If I look at the content that we create for our clients or even the reels that I've created, I find that 10 seconds is honestly the sweet spot, but it totally depends on how long the video clips are that you're creating. If you're editing to maybe a beat of an audio, it depends on how long you need the video to go to really get the whole feel for that audio. But also it depends on the text that you're adding to your video. Sometimes it's just a one-liner, but sometimes I find that a paragraph can work really well, or maybe a few different text sections. So it depends, but 10 seconds is definitely like the perfect length to not only get them hooked, get them engaged, but ideally get them rewatching, which is what makes those videos perform really well. And by rewatching, I do not mean the clickbait of, do you want to know the 5 things to do this? Pause, read the caption. That's not what we're talking about here. But then when we get into a talking to camera style video, I found that 60 seconds is a really great sweet spot to aim for, because then if you go a little bit over, you're still under that mark. But also if it's a little shorter, that also can work really well. I think with talking videos, they can be pretty boring, especially if someone's sitting in the same place the entire video. So that's where you want to add in maybe visual elements like text, jump cuts, B-roll, green screens to really make it interesting. But if what you're actually talking about in your video is really great, I think those longer talking videos can work really well. And then we have these like storytelling, demonstrating, tutorial blog style videos where maybe there's a lot of different video clips, maybe there's music, but maybe there's also a voiceover or talking element. So it's essentially using all the different video elements in one piece of content. And because these typically tell a story, whether it's like how to do something step by step, or if it's how I got here in my journey, these definitely can be a short, snappy, cute little vlog, but I definitely find that these can work really well when they're actually a little bit longer, because you're able to add all the context, main points, details that are really necessary to telling a great story or showing a process or how to do something. And when it comes to YouTube, which like I said, it's the Wild West, it really depends on the type of content. So if it's something more casual, more chatty, maybe even a podcast video episode, or if it's something that is really showing something like a vlog or a tutorial or a demonstration, I found that these should be 20 minutes or longer to really be effective. But if maybe we have something that's like educational or a little bit more like a hot take, I found the sweet spot for me is between 5 and 15 minutes. Because in those types of content, people really want you to get to the point and share what that takeaway is right away in the content. If you've loved all the tips and insights that I've been sharing so far, I highly recommend checking out my long form content workshop, which shares the strategy that you need to not only post great content on YouTube, but also to integrate it with a podcast strategy. So you can be on both platforms and see amazing results. So I'm going to be sharing the strategy that has helped me not only grow my podcast and my YouTube channel, but has helped me also grow my business from not only getting new opportunities as a creator to getting new clients and even to getting speaking opportunities. So I will leave all the details to this workshop in the description. Wrap up content types. Yes, the format and the type of content that you're creating definitely is going to play a factor into how long your video is. But what's most important is what you're actually saying or talking about or showing in your video is going to probably be a bigger factor than how long it actually is. Now let's get to the strategy that I think is something not enough people are doing, and it is creating concise video content. Concise does not mean shorter content. It means that every second of your video is adding value to the final piece of content. So when I'm filming content or editing content, I always go back to this question of, is every second of this video adding value to the final content? From there, I will cut stuff, I will reorder different sections, or I'll keep certain sections in the final video. And the more and more you practice this muscle of being concise in your content, the less tweaking you'll need to do in future videos. So let's break down what does and does not add value to your videos. What doesn't add value? Rambles. Rambling in your content is never helpful. You can be casual, you can be off the cusp, you can have those personality moments, but just rambling and talking in circles with no end in sight is not going to create great content. Also, being repetitive. And this is something that we see all the time in our agency for our clients when they submit content, is sometimes naturally as you're filming, you just repeat things over and over again. And so that's where you can just remove things that you've repeated or said multiple times in your piece of content if it isn't adding to the final video. Another one, which might sound nitpicky, but makes the biggest difference, is pauses, breaks, breathing, even something as small as like you're setting your phone down to press record and you're like not actually talking or doing something in that part of the video. These are things that you want to cut out and trim and remove in your video. I know this is called the millennial pause, where people will literally press record and they're recording, and then they actually start talking or get to the point of the video. Those seconds are so valuable that you don't want to lose people's attention by just keeping a pause in your video. So those are things I definitely remove. But note, I said I don't try to like film something in one go without those things being a part of the final content. And another thing that I like to think of is when I'm looking at a final video and I'm like, oh, this is maybe a little longer than I thought or longer than it needs to be. I always like to think is, can this be a supporting piece of content? So if I find that this certain section doesn't really need to be in the video, can I add that as a bonus tip in the caption? Or when you're putting together a piece of content, does one main point or section, can that be in its own video in itself? Things that do add value to your content is whenever you're adding context to what you're actually talking about. So maybe it's credibility, maybe it's a case study, maybe it's a story. Those are things that you definitely want to keep in your videos. Personality and interesting, fun little moments. You don't want to take everything out of your video to the point where it's just so sterile and boring. I think that's what makes really great content, is types of creators where it feels like you're literally on FaceTime with them and talking with them. So keep those bits in your content, but we don't need the rambles. And the things that we want to add into your video, the things that add value, is really being comprehensive. We don't want to leave out an important detail that makes the content better. So we want to make sure we're hitting on everything and we're not sacrificing content just to make it shorter. So I want to share some extra tips for making more concise video content. The first is to outline what is absolutely essential. As I'm literally recording this podcast video, I have my outline off to the side. Keep in mind, this is not a script. I don't have everything verbatim, word for word that I want to say, but I have the main points and the overall structure of the content that I want to create. So this really helps you stay on track, avoid rambles, not be repetitive, but it also gives me a lot of time to rant, rift, and at the end of the day, I'm the expert at my content, so I don't need to read everything I prep to create a great episode. And this is also something that the more and more you practice not reading off a script, the easier it's going to get. And also, I have an outline and I'm not like out here freeballing it. This is something I see people do that don't do scripting, but they do the complete opposite of like literally not prepping anything at all. Even just having what is the intro, what are the main points, and then what is the ending part of your content is going to make your content so much better because when you are just filming off the cusp, that is when you add in random things or you ramble or you miss things because you don't have a roadmap that you're following. So this will always make your content more concise. I have an entire lesson on this inside the video content camp because it's so important. The next thing is to get multiple takes of you saying certain things. So whenever I maybe have mistakes or I don't know if I like how I said something, I will just say it multiple ways. I typically find that if I say something 3 different ways, it's usually the third way that I actually really like because you're able to tweak and improve it. And most importantly, I record more than I need when it comes to B-roll or talking parts of my video without the pressure that I have to use everything that I recorded. This just gives you options so you can make sure you're choosing the best final edit that you possibly can. The next tip is to lean into micro over macro content. So macro content is covering everything you can possibly think about a topic or idea, but micro is really diving into one very specific tip or strategy. So don't lean into the trap of feeling like you need to overstuff and over deliver in your content. Simpler content is better. And so when you're outlining, when you're filming, or when you're editing, I want you to ask the question of, does this need to be in this piece of content or is this another video of its own? Honestly, that's a way better strategy too of posting one part of a topic and then continue to build on it in multiple videos. And the last tip, which I already touched on, is making sure you're having a review stage when you're editing. So I like to go through my final piece of content and review it and ask, does this need to be here? Is this necessary? Could this text that I'm adding be shorter? And the final tip that I want to share around video length is finding a balance between leaning into your strengths and what's working in your strategy, but also balancing short and long form in your strategy. If you take anything away from this episode, is that there really isn't one ideal length for your video content. Most people will see success with their video content and the length that they're choosing for their videos when they lean into their own strengths. Some people find it a lot easier to create shorter content. Some people find it a lot easier to create longer content or somewhere in the middle. But wherever you tend to lie within that is probably what's going to perform a little bit better for you. So we want to lean into that. But also on the other spectrum, when I was just looking at my content, I was looking at content from other accounts, other creators, other businesses. The people that are seeing the best results with their content and seeing consistent engagement and reach and interactions and growth on their accounts are actually the people that have a really great balance of both. So they might have shorter content in their strategy, but they also have longer content. At the end of the day, this really applies to your video content strategy as a whole, is you want to have variety because this will allow different types of consumers and different types of ideal followers to find the types of content that they like versus only catering to one type of consumption preference. Because even if we go back to YouTube, the type of person that's watching a 5-minute YouTube video is very different than the person that's watching a 60-minute podcast episode on YouTube. So I recommend experimenting and incorporating different video lengths in your content strategy. This includes on specific platforms, but also includes adding a mix into your entire content strategy. So if you have left inspired from this podcast episode to actually lean into long form content, I highly recommend checking out the workshop that I'm hosting that not only shares how I turn podcast episodes into video content on YouTube, but how you can easily optimize your strategy and your workflow to get 2 pieces of content with just one time recording. So I share my tools, I share the tips, I shared everything that has really helped me see results with the strategy, which is literally what I'm doing right now. You're listening on a podcast, you're watching the YouTube, and this is going to become a bunch of reels and other pieces of content. So if you want to learn more about that, I will leave all the workshop details in the description. And I hope you found this episode really helpful.